Howdy guys and gals, welcome back to the Social Regressive, where we're taking a look at telekinesis, first rounds through the rifle. Just about an hour ago, I put the first rounds through it so I could do my break-in. I just got some factory ammo and got all the little burrs out of there, lapped up the barrel, and so it should be good to go, and we're gonna do some Satterlee tests now. Behind me, here we have 105 grain Hornady boat tail hollow points, and then here we have some 87s, and some 87 grain VMAX. These are all with Reloader 16, and these should all be very precise. The quick load recipe was looking very good on here, and as you may have seen in the past with 6.5 Creedmoor, Reloader 16 is great for these medium cartridges, especially some of these that have a little bit lighter weight projectiles. Now these are heavy for caliber, but still, you know, smaller than 308. This is the Target Vision target camera. So we have our unit right up close here. This is the one that is our little Wi-Fi router going back to the tablet. All of it comes inside this neat case, but then way downrange, we have the camera unit. And that one is very high resolution. I'll show you here in a second on the tablet. All this comes in one kit. There are a couple different levels. This one is the long range version that can get out past a mile. They actually have a 2-mile guarantee on this. And of course, we will be testing that eventually. Maybe not with this rifle, but with that 6.5 Creedmoor again.
Cinches pretty well too. What do they call that? That would have been a phase 2, yeah.
It is really bright out here. I'll do my best to show you the interface though. I got you inside the car here. All right, so here's the group that I just shot. And this is the way that the interface looks when you're actually in here. Now, first off, if you want to take a still shot of this target, so you want to be able to just grab it, it's that center button right there. That'll allow you to save a screenshot. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that it's going to take a screenshot based on whatever zoom you're at. So if you take this screenshot, you're not going to have all this data. This is actually quite large. I'll put an annotation of the actual dimensions that you can get, the pixel dimensions, because this is a very sharp camera, and I think this is one of the things that really sets it apart from all the others out there. This is very high resolution, as you can see. These little 6mm holes in here are showing up nicely. Now, if we wanted to mark some of these shots so we could keep track of them, which is a big deal for me in a Satterlee load workup, then what I could do is I could just zoom in on these and then start clicking them. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I make a mistake, I can just press that to back up. Try it again. So yeah, I can start marking all these up so I can know which ones. This is very important for Satterlee because those hits can actually kind of move around here in ways that you don't really expect. They can actually start coming down and then come back up. It really gets into some weird harmonics. If you want to hide these shot markers, all you have to do is hit the eyeball right there. They go away, hit it again, and they come back. And all of this can be controlled right up here. You can choose your marker color, marker size. Now right here, if you click New Session, this will allow you to save everything that you do. So all of your screenshots will be kind of saved inside here, and you can keep all of your data. One thing to keep in mind is that that shot marker is not saved in any way unless you take that screenshot, and then you can see it in the picture. We're going to interpret the data while it's still fresh, but before we do that, I wanted to take a close look at some of the gear that we used out there. This Longshot LR3 is such an amazing little piece of gear for just for this kind of work where you can't necessarily see your bullet holes, and we'll talk about that. But first, also, I wanted to show off some of the things that I configured here on the telekinesis rifle. Again, this is a Savage 12 FV in 243, and the big thing that we're really testing here is that preferred barrel. This is from Preferred Barrel Blanks. Beautifully cut. It's a 3R rifle. It's a 1 in 8 twist, 243 Winchester. It's not, anything really fancy like 243 AI or anything. I just really love 243 Winchester. It's a wonderful cartridge. And what we have sitting up on top here, this is the Bushnell Match Pro Scope. I still think that this is not yet available for sale. I've been doing some kind of pre-testing on this, and I am blown away by it. This takes pretty much all the tricks that you can get from a Bushnell scope and then compiles them all into this one 6 to 24 by 50 package. So this absorbs a lot of light. It has just a ton of resolution going on. And this is going to be great for you match shooters, but a lot of us varminters as well. Really cool scope. Make sure that you keep watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because eventually I will release the full review of this scope. Also out on this end, this is the YHM Phantom muzzle brake. This is also the attachment for my silencer. This one can go, it's a silencer that goes up to 30 caliber, and this is currently muzzle threaded for 5/8 24. So eventually I can start to shoot a little bit more quietly with this. I'm really looking forward to that, especially on prairie dogs. That is going to be a whole lot of fun. All right, so this right here, this is the Longshot LR3. There are a couple of different models. Make sure you go check out their catalog. I'll put a link to Longshot down below. And this one is kind of their highest end model. They have one that's just set up for bench rest shooters that want to be able to very quickly patch into this thing. You just put the camera down range, and then you can see your targets within probably about 300 yards. And actually, that product is in this box right now. So that's going to be the camera unit. And you can see that number one, it's very stylish looking. They obviously went to some lengths to make it look good. And it's just, very solid overall. This is partly weatherproof. So if it does start to drizzle on you, you're not going to lose your camera. It's not going to blow up or anything. And yeah, everything is just very neatly squared away on here. Inside the case, you do get a charger. And this is going to work for both units. If you want to be able to charge both pieces at once, you probably need to purchase a separate charger here, but you do get one. So yeah, it just plugs in right down here, and then this is your switch for on and off. Very simple. It's just going to light up and tell you how much battery you have left. So actually, after our session yesterday, okay, we have about half battery left. It's giving us 2 dots of battery indication. Also, once you power this up, these are going to start to light up to let you know, number one, do you have power? Are you connecting? And this is not just that camera, but it is a Wi-Fi router as well. You'll notice there are no wires to hang off this. It's all just neatly in one piece. And what you do is set it up on this tiny little tripod out by your target. And then this is going to get you a little bit of space up above the ground, a little bit of clearance. This is built so that, as long as you have pretty good line of sight, you're going to get a decent connection. But I will say that part of the reason why they have these is Fresnel zone interference and Fresnel zone obstruction. And if you want to check out some little things, I can put a link down below to how those work. But sometimes out over flat farmland, you can actually get into interference where you can start to lose connection. So make sure you don't just put this flat on the ground. Use these little tripods. It's going to at least hopefully help to keep from those obstructions. Oh, and one thing I should point out here, the camera, once you get it in place, the back of this kind of faces toward the shooter. It faces toward you. And then if you want to be able to angle the camera to point toward your target, like you want to be able to put it kind of off from the target a little bit, so maybe if you drop a bullet, it's not going to go through the unit, This is not armored at all, but you can actually aim the camera left, right, up and down, depending on what you're doing. And I might as well mention that this is threaded right here for any kind of tripod. So if you want to be able to use a higher tripod to get up to maybe a higher target, you can certainly use that instead of these little guys that come in the case. The other piece is going to be this little base unit right here that you can use to extend your distance. So this, if you're getting past 300 yards, and 300 yards can sometimes be a little bit sketchy depending on what kind of terrain you're dealing with, but this is the one that's going to get you out to that 2 miles plus. You set this up and it's going to do a very good job of grabbing the signal from this and then kind of relaying it back to you. And like I mentioned, each of these is set up as a Wi-Fi router, so when you are setting up your software here, first, if you have your tablet or your phone or your laptop, you're going to connect to this Wi-Fi router that's out there in the field, and then from there it's going to kind of automatically grab it inside the Target Vision software and allow you to see it. Now, one last thing that I was testing is this new bag. I have a handful of these that were sent to me by this sandbag company. I'll put a link to that below. But this is a pretty nifty little way to be able to quickly adapt heights to different rifles. So if you have one that has kind of a higher magazine or has a very big drop at the toe like Telekinesis does, it just has a whole lot of vertical to it. You can roll this puppy up and use it as a sandbag rest. And then if you want to be able to get down lower to the ground, you can start to unroll this in either direction, out in front of you or in back of you. I think this is going to be a really cool option for bench rest shooters, where maybe, I know that when I'm on a bench, and I don't really like to shoot from a bench very much, if you have a bipod, it tends to kind of drag around on the concrete and you get that hop out of the bipod. And in general, it just doesn't really interface very well. This could be a really cool option for you that can kind of get past some of those issues. It really allows the rifle to settle down, especially if you kind of, pound a little channel into the sand and you sit up on top of this. You can get actually a kind of a very comfortable way of connecting the rifle kind of to the ground. It's very stable, but it's also not going to have that, hard surface on hard surface sort of connection. And you sort of get a smooth recoil back through here. I am going to continue to test these and let you know what I think of these overall, but yesterday's test was a good indication of how it works, and I really do kind of dig it. This is actually not filled with sand, this is filled with walnut husks. So it doesn't weigh a whole ton. And I don't know, I'm kind of curious to see how it's going to deal with water, but I think for the most part, this is probably not going to be one I'm going to drag out into the field. This is going to be more for range day. And then, of course, I've got the Champion rear bag going on here, which was a really good match for this on the back end. Now we're going to dig into that delicious data. This requires some interpretation, and it also does require a chronograph. So actually, up there I have my Shooting Crony beta model, which has it's kind of the master model that has the extendable readout, has the little screen that you can bring out there, and this is going to be crucial for figuring out how this works. We're using kind of a modified Satterlee load workup method, and this is one that I've really shown off in 6.5 Creedmoor, so check out the link to that video. I'll put it either around here or down in the description below, because this is going to show a little bit of a tweak to Satterlee's method, where I'm starting to not just have a decent looking overall length, but I've actually kind of shortened things up a little bit each time, and I have actually 4 different lengths. So I have one that starts out with about a 40 thousandths jump, back it off by 10, back it off by 10, back it off by 10, and we're going to see which one of these came out the best. What we're looking for on this chart is we're trying to find out where we have some of these kind of plateaus in our velocity graph here, where the velocities kind of stabilize, and if those interact with what we might consider the accuracy node on the barrel, because the barrel is going to have a certain point in time, I think, where it's going to be settled down and kind of pointing in the right direction. It's not going to be whipping anywhere. And that's going to be our best accuracy, but then we also want to match it up with our best velocity precision so that at different distances we can very easily get those rounds on target. So let's take a look here. First off, and as we dig into this, I'm going to be using the screenshots that I generated through the Target Vision software. So the camera was picking it up back here, and I was marking the shots, and we're going to see where those kind of cluster up together and are tight on the target, and then we're going to have the velocities. We're going to see if they overlap. All right, so first off, with our longest length, we had 2.754 as the cartridge overall length with that 105 grain bullet. And this was pretty wild. This one had a pretty wild ride through all of its velocities. You can see that its curve is pretty crazy, and that things really only started to settle down as they got up toward the very top of those velocities, the highest charges that I had. And one thing that I should mention overall is that I was not getting any really weird pressure signs at all in here. I got no sticky bolt whatsoever. The entire time I was shooting, everything was very fingertippy. I could just flip the bolt, pop the cartridge out. There was no difficulty in extracting anything. And we did start to put a little edge on the roundness of some of the primers, but overall I could grab anything that I loaded up here and it's at least going to be safe, no weird pressure. But yeah, as we get up toward the top, we can see that the velocities start to settle down a little bit at that 12 and 13. So we're looking at 2907 velocity and 2912. And we're getting into about a ½ inch spread actually between those last 4 shots. And we're looking at the verticals here mostly. As we take that overall length down another 10 thousandths, we're getting into one that doesn't really seem to match up. This one had a very smooth curve overall, and I can, readily see where my powder charge should be. Upper, kind of between 7 and 8. That's looking really good. But unfortunately, that's where the bullets were really, there was quite a bit of space between them. There was a lot of vertical space. So I don't think that this particular length worked out very well for me. I'm kind of getting some difference between where the velocities were smooth and where the accuracy was smooth. So we're going to jump down. So now we're at 2.734. And this is another one that just overall was kind of meh. Shots 9 and 10 were kind of sort of close, but it doesn't match up with any of the velocity plateaus. This one really is kind of a mess. So far it's looking like our first round was good. Let's see how the fourth one does. This one starts to match up really well in addition. So we're looking at 7.24 inches. And then right around shot 7, this is where the magic starts to happen. We get a really broad velocity plateau, and then we get roughly 1 inch of vertical space between those shots. And I think that's starting to really indicate a good spot of settling down. I think this one could work very well. So I think what I'm going to do is I will load up probably about 10 rounds with that number 7 charge, and we'll see how that shoots. And then we're going to take some from that first round. We're going to do probably a charge somewhere between shots 12 and 13, where things were really starting to settle down there as well. And we're going to see how those print. We're going to check the velocities while we're out there and just make sure that everything's looking good. But I think that one of those two is going to be my best performer. And you'll notice that they actually have very similar velocities, just a little bit past 2,900 feet per second. I did also work on those 87s while I was out there, and I might indicate some of the data a little bit later. But for now, we'll gloss over that because those 105s are going to be just really fun for target shooting. Very clean through the air, high ballistic coefficient, and they should make a good impact even on some, kind of medium-ish, smaller game if we decide to do that. In general, talking about the Longshot LR3 and some of the other models that they have, this is one where just basically if you have a difficult time seeing your target, this is going to be a must. Sometimes you can use that spotting scope to be able to see things a little bit better. Of course, you can see bullet trace through the air to see where your bullet's going to go. But then when it comes to actually seeing your impacts, especially on paper out at some of those longer distances, even with a fine scope like this, we had a ton of mirage today. and I had a very difficult time seeing bullet holes. Sometimes I could see them where they were kind of clustering up together. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's where I'm printing. But for the most part, I couldn't see an individual bullet hole. That's where this comes in. And maybe, just because of that mirage, a spotting scope might not have worked in that case either. There's certainly a time for each. A spotting scope is going to be able to see trace, it's going to be able to see misses, and it's going to be able to move around very quickly between different targets if I was, maybe shooting at game or maybe hopping from target to target. Whereas this one, the camera is going to be locked down, pointing at, one target out there. And I will definitely not be able to see bullet trace. There is one little trick though that I should mention. So, in the future, as we're shooting at some of these longer distances, if I want to be able to see some of my misses, impacts on the ground around the targets, this does have a video mode that kind of steps up from the about 1 frame per second that you get. It just kind of sends back a high resolution picture 1 per second so you can see your target, but you can switch it into a higher frame rate video mode, which seems to be about 15 frames a second, and you can start to see more dirt splashes. So hopefully together with a spotting scope and with the camera system, we can be able to figure out impacts at some of those really long distances. And as you've seen in some of the previous videos, those can be really tough. Thanks a bunch to everybody that has made these videos possible. Thank you to Longshot for sending the camera system for me to check out. I've been wanting to check this one out for a good long while. Thank you to Preferred Barrel Blanks for the barrel that we have on here, and then Bushnell for the Match Pro rifle scope. It's nice to have a bunch of folks that are interested in what we've been doing around here and want to see if maybe their product can help improve our performance out there. And so far, we've gotten into some really good ones. But thank you to patrons of the Destructive Arts. We have Sportsman's Guide and Stan and Mary at the 338 Lapua Magnum level. And then we have Joseph Davis, and we have Peter at the 300 Win Mag level. And then everybody else that's chipping in $1 or $2 a month to keep the lights on, keep the cameras rolling, and keep tests like these coming. You guys are really making it happen. I'll see you all around.